You know, they're selling y'all wolf tickets, people. You're eating them right up.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?
I back. Trust me, I back.
But I'm not impressed by your performance.
Ele deu nothing. Ele deu nothing. Shut your fucking mouth. Ele deu nothing. Ele deu fucking nothing. Not one of you will do nothing.
I'll tell you what, bro. You know, I was out there. I was fighting all the hitters, bro. You ain't fought no hitters.
Come on, guys. Normal.
I'm not saying I would fight you. I would kill you.
John, do you think? John, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, John? I mean, really?
No, don't be scared, homie.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the fuck he wants.
I'm gonna beat you into the living death. I mean, maybe that's your job, but where I come from, you know, people like that get slapped.
That's fucking illegal.
Nick Diaz, you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Yeah, this is a simulated death match. And you haven't simulated anybody's death yet.
I said it last year. We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
What is the game plan going in against him?
The game plan is you go in there, hit him with some good shit, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
Do you want to be a fighter? That is my question.
Any of you radio personalities think you want smoke? Call me Mr. Chimney. I want smoke.
Yes. What is up, MCR family? Another daily edition of Mixed Combat Radio. I'm Matt, the Hipster Hunter, obviously with Fugatti, here with the MMA edition of the show. We're going to be breaking down UFC 235, previewing it, breaking down the whole card. Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith, Tyron Woodley versus Kamaru Usman, Ben Askren making his UFC debut against Robbie Lawler, and more. Plus UFC Prague in review. Obviously, on top of that, a brief mention of it because there's not much to discuss about it other than Thiago Santos absolutely obliterating Jan Blachowicz in a way that I don't think anyone really expected. But digressing from that, also we have Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier announcement being confirmed for the interim lightweight title for UFC 236. What an interesting time to be an MMA fan. It is. And obviously PFL getting their ESPN deal. And from my knowledge, this is the first time in MMA history, especially in the U.S., I don't know about in Japan or maybe other markets, but in the U.S. market, where we have two major MMA promotions in the same TV network. First time ever, I think, in MMA history that's happening. So definitely going to be interesting to see what the dynamics of these two promotional companies that don't co-promote and how they interact with each other, what the dynamic is with all being under the ESPN umbrella. But like I said, I'm joined today by Mr. Jesse Fugatti, Mr. Top Rank himself. Fugatti, how you doing on this fine Monday afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are listening around the world? Fu, what's up?
Man, not a whole lot. Excited to talk about, obviously, UFC 235. Prague wasn't bad, so it'll be fun to review a couple of those fights. I had some fun fights. I don't think anything too crazy, but obviously we got some other topics to talk about. You said Poirier and Holloway, right?
Yep.
So that's an interesting fight. And then hopefully we'll talk about moonsaults.
Wait, moonsaults? What?
Yeah.
Did I miss a link in the chat?
The guy in one of the outfits is he did two moonsaults in one fight.
Oh, the lion salt, whatever that shit was. Yeah, okay. I swore you meant like moonsault, like that was some sort of like drug, like bath salts. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Oh, that would be dope too, though.
I'm like, did Kron Gracie say more crazy shit? But digressing from that, we're gonna get into flat Earth.
Flat Earth.
God damn it, Kron. We were so excited for you, Kron Gracie. Then you have to go say some wild shit like that. Move over, Kron. We're going back to Neiman Gracie over in Bellator. But digressing, before we get to any of the topics, head over to patreon.com/mixedcombatradio to get extra shows per week. exclusively to Patreon. That link is below in the description. On top of that, $1 a month gets you all that access, and all we're asking for is 1 month. All the proceeds does go towards Fu and Robbie Hearn getting their camera equipment, offsetting some travel costs, so we can get some interviews for you and obviously travel to some events. And digressing from that, like button, share the show, subscribe, all that stuff. Listen on podcast form and drop a 5-star review on iTunes. But let's get to the fights coming up this weekend, because let's be honest, that's what the people care about in a lot of ways. Jon Jones went from, just 2 months ago, it was, late December was obviously the UFC 232 card with Alexander Gustafsson. It was, fight week. Transport us to fight week of that. Card was moved, I think, on Monday or Tuesday of that week due to Jon Jones pulsating picograms of Turinabol. And I'm not even going to relitigate any of that. But now that we're in February, end of February, and we're 2 fights out from that fight week now, he beat, obviously, Alexander Gustafsson in dominant fashion. That pay-per-view did around 700,000 buys, which was shocking and a really good number. Now he's coming into I would say, a less-known fight, maybe a lower-profile event as well. But in my mind, I still think it's going to do great numbers. I still think Jon Jones is sort of back in some ways. And it's just weird. I feel like the entire MMA community is still just waiting to see where when the hat drops, right? And oh wait, Jon Jones can't fight anymore due to X, Y, and Z, and we no longer get him in the cage. I feel like there is that cloud still hanging over it. Am I wrong in that, Phil? That everyone's still waiting, and holding their breath, making sure that this fight still goes on, and a Jon Jones fight week no longer seems like we can get hyped for it. It's always deeply, deeply worrying. Fu, your thoughts on that?
It's not just that the one fight won't happen. It's with GSP retiring and being kind of in contention for the talk of greatest, MMA fighter of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I went back and, I'm a casual. I admit it. I don't know a lot about the UFC. I'm learning a lot more about MMA, but I watched quite literally probably every Jon Jones fight in the last 3 days. And the people that he went through to become to first become champion and then to defend his title so many times. I want to say he has a light heavyweight record, right?
Yes.
For defenses.
By far.
And
and
dominated.
In essence, obviously still the lineal champion in that division. He's never been beat by Daniel Cormier. Obviously, he was stripped. So even though his title defense reign is over, he is still, in essence, defending that lineal belt to this day.
Yeah, so this would be if you imagine Roy Jones in the 90s not being able to box. And you're oh my God, the best boxer, the most entertaining boxer. He can't get a fight. He can't get through any of the commissions, He can't get sanctioned to fight. So I think that's where a lot of MMA junkies are kind of oh, fuck, please don't get popped again. Please don't lose the ability to fight anymore. Because he's talking 3 fights. He's talking maybe heavyweight move up to fight Cormier for the 3rd fight. So there's a lot there. And I think as a casual coming in and seeing his dominance, it's this dude is very entertaining and just it's amazing to watch. I think he only trained for 9 months before his first fight. Mm-hmm. And to watch his progression from his first fight to maybe his 3rd, how dominant he's become now, it's insane. And I think that's more what the fans are worried about is you would lose a lot in the UFC if you lost Jon Jones again. He just brings so much to the table.
Absolutely. I mean, not only from the UFC's side of it, but from the sports side of it. I think a sport, MMA without Jon Jones is a lesser thing. It is. Jon Jones, regardless of his PD consumption and the controversy surrounding that, he is with all sense of the word, a phenom. And honestly, I mean, if it wasn't for the 12-6 elbow against Matt Hamill, he's undefeated. You know, he is the closest thing we have to like maybe Mayweather in a sense in terms of perfection, you know, in the art.
So I wanted to ask you about that. This might be like derailing us a little bit, but to me,
it's okay.
it might be a good point for people. Why didn't it just go as a no contest instead of a win for Hamill?
He got DQ'd?
Well, but originally, like even the announcers were like, "Oh, he won," and then all of a sudden they went to the judges and they were like, "Disqualified."
Well, yes. I mean, it was a 12-6 elbow. So you had Joe Rogan at that time, whoever it was, probably Joe and Mike Goldberg, having no idea what's happening. Joe Rogan's high off his ass. Mike Goldberg's doing lines of coke in the back, allegedly. So, you know, I mean, come on. Like, yeah, they don't know what's exactly happening. And again, like, Jon Jones was beating the shit out of Matt Hamill, and then the fight was stopped due to that 12-6 elbow, and he was disqualified. So if you're disqualified, you lose. You know how that works.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why it is. It's an illegal strike he threw, and he threw it on purpose.
Because originally they were just going to take a point. Like originally, like the ref got up, moved him away, and then like as soon as the guy couldn't continue, he was like, "Nah, like it's over," and he DQ'd him. So it's just really weird to me. But I just wondered that.
Well, I mean, like obviously, like a 12-6 elbow play shouldn't be illegal, but hey, I mean, this is MMA. Whoop-de-fucking do.
By the rules. Yeah.
But anything else about that aspect to it?
No, man. I think where you were going with that is, I mean,
well, back to what I was talking about, Jon Jones and like him again. Him not being in the sport, or the potential for him to not be in the sport, and that constant worrying by the MMA community in a way because of that is in large part because we do want to see the greatness that is Jon Jones. He is probably the most perfect fighter we've seen. In terms of he can do anything, he can do all things. You know, there obviously maybe his boxing ability has always been his sort of flaw, but that's been shored up, I would say, in the last couple of years, as it seemed. I mean, he outboxed Alexander Gustafsson. Who would have thought that he would, and do so rather easily, right? He just disarmed him. You know, he was, and on top of that, I mean, his mind for the game. The only person that comes close is Jordan St. Pierre. Like, it is those two guys in my mind. No offense to Demetrius Johnson, love Demetrius Johnson, but flyweight's depth is a question mark. And on top of that, we did see him lose to Dominic Cruz at 135. And on top of that, I would have really liked to see that Ian McCall trilogy that never happened. But digressing from that, I think it is Jon Jones, George St. Pierre. Those are the two greatest of all time. And depending on who you ask and what the day is and who is the topic of conversation, one of them is the greatest. Jon Jones run through the legends of 205, the legends of light heavyweight, Rampage Jackson, Machida, Rashad Evans, Shogun Rua. You know, the list goes on and on. Vitor Belfort. I mean, it is, and even like cult classic, like fan favorites like Stephan Bonner. You know, that he has decimated everyone that you loved, and did it in such a perfect manner. Like the moments we talk about Jon Jones struggling is 2 or 3 rounds with Alexander Gustafsson, the first fight. The first round with Machida, even though not really.
No, he still won the round, but he did struggle a little bit. Yeah,
and maybe like the first Daniel Cormier fight, but he just out-wrestled Daniel Cormier. Like, it was such a really simple fight in that sense. Jon Jones has done it in such an easy manner. Like, we always, I think, need to contextualize every time Jon Jones fights because, A, we never know if it's the last time, and B, with how great he is, we need to contextualize how much of a phenom he is, how much of an impact he has on the sport, because no one's like him. Not even George. George has his L's. You know, he has a very different story than Jon Jones. Even Fedor, even Demetrius Johnson, like you go down the list of all the greats, Jose Aldo, none of them have the story of Jon Jones. And I think that's always partly the reason why we are so upset about the PED controversy. But digressing from all of that, and sort of the bigger, like, macro concepts of this fight and just Jon Jones' career as a whole, let's get to the fight itself. Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith, headlining UFC 235 pay-per-view this Saturday. I mean, this is relatively an easy fight to call, right? Jon Jones is better in probably every single category than Anthony Smith. Maybe not for one-punch knockout power, obviously, because Anthony Smith does have a legit puncher's chance here. But the striking or boxing advantage Anthony Smith might have is, I would say, probably non-existent post this Gustafsson 2 fight. The fact that we saw Jon Jones again easily negate all of the offensive output from Gustafsson, who is a very talented MMA boxer, and then pieced him apart with boxing. I think Jon Jones is going to be constantly in his range, constantly in his comfort zone, and just picking apart Anthony Smith. I think he's probably going to take him down second or third round, beat him up, and get either a submission or TKO finish. This is going to be a very one-sided fight, and it's really going to just come to how fast does Jon Jones want to pick him apart? How fast does Jon Jones want to destroy him? Because I don't think Anthony Smith is really going to put up any sort of defense. Defensively, Anthony Smith is completely flawed in every way. Offensively, he's gifted with power, with timing, with some good boxing ability, but that's about it. And plus, he's a guy that's lost to middleweights. He's a guy that's lost to far inferior opponents. And beating old people that Jon Jones beat nearly a decade ago doesn't mean much to me, to be quite honest, especially in connection to fighting Jon Jones. It means a lot for obviously just ranking in the division, but does that mean you're going to beat Jon Jones? No, it doesn't. Not at all. Fu, your thoughts on Anthony Smith, Jon Jones in this light heavyweight title fight?
Yeah, I think, you nailed it. Anthony Smith's obviously his number one attribute is his strength, his one-punch KO power. It really serves him well in fights where he's on even footing with someone, and the other strength he really has is he doesn't panic. He never really panics in a fight. He's very much a mature fighter. He's had a ton of fights. I think he's a double the fights of Jon Jones, pretty much.
Well, this was a guy, just for a quick context for people that don't know, like, this is a guy that was a journeyman in the regional scene for a very long time. This is not a young guy. He's 30 years old. He has how many fights? 44 fights, 13 losses. Most of those are by knockout as well. This isn't a guy that's a rising prospect. He's a guy that's caught some renaissance, caught some late stage career sort of wind. He sort of pieced it a little bit together. Came in a time when 205 is barren, when there's no one at the division right now to contend with. Everyone that is in the top 10 is either very old or non-commodities. Still very raw prospects like a Dominic Reyes. So Anthony Smith came in at the right time, caught the right moment, and got this fight against Jon Jones, more so than he earned it, to be quite honest. And also, he is a guy that is deeply flawed and has a deeply flawed career, especially in the regional scene. Back to you, Fu.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw against Özdemir that he was not comfortable at all with getting kicked in the legs by Özdemir. Was not comfortable with the power that the shots he was getting hit with. So think about Jon Jones has 4-5 leg kicks he uses, like different types of leg kicks he uses. A killer flying knee. Probably the best wrestler at 205. Definitely the best ground and pound guy at 205. So I think third round would be, probably if he gets the third round, Jon Jones is probably taking it light on him early on. But I don't think this guy has anything to deal with Jon. It's going to be a brutal beat down. The legs are going to be, it's going to be rough. Like, I think he's going to really wreck this guy's legs in the first round or two, and then just really go to town on him in the third round.
it's going to get to the point where it's like, man, I know it's not enough offense being put out to stop the fight, but I kind of wish the fight would be stopped. Like, it's going to get to that point by midway in the second round. That's how bad of a matchup this just innately is. This is a guy that started out his career 5-6. I think he has a trilogy with Josh Neer in the regional scene. Josh Neer. If you don't know who that is, first off, go do some tape study because he's a great regional fighter, great journeyman. But he's a journeyman, and he had a trilogy with this guy in the regional scene. So,
yeah, I mean, he doesn't have anything that like Lyoto Machida was a great striker, and when he would do the rushing coming forward and put John on his back foot, like that was tough for Jon Jones. Like he'd never really been pressed and had to move backwards like that. And then, when Vitor Belfort, he took Belfort down and nearly got armbarred, right? Or whatever, really quickly in the fight. Oh yeah. So, I mean, this guy doesn't have any of those abilities. He's not like someone who's been doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu since he was 6 years old or something. He's kind of like just a makeshift fighter. He has a bunch of different aspects of fighting, but nothing that he's really top notch on. He's just kind of a one hitter quitter, and if it doesn't happen, he's going to lose.
Him getting this shot is more of an indicator of the division's depth than his talent. Just being honest. No, I know Anthony probably thinks it's shade, but sorry, it's just God honest truth. So let's get to probably the fight that I am far more interested in out of the two title fights. Tyron Woodley versus Kamaru Usman. Really a fight of like, I don't know, like almost mirror images of each other in a way. Both guys very dominant top wrestlers. Great natural grappling ability when it comes to submissions. Brutal ground and pound. Great cardio, great athleticism. I would say Woodley is probably the better technical boxer of the two, the better striker of the two. I would say he probably has faster hands, better timing. But Kamaru Usman is improving. Like, that is one of those things where I don't know if this is the fight where Usman now has put it all together. You know what I mean? Like, similar to Aljamain Sterling, right? I talked about it when he faced Jamie Rivera. Aljamain Sterling, I thought, was putting it all together. Kamaru Usman's very close to that. And that's what's giving me a lot of hesitance about picking Tyron Woodley. On top of that, Woodley's also not a spring chicken. I think Woodley's, 36, 37 years old. Like, he is an old man in this sport, and we don't realize it just because I think he's hitting his stride in a way. On top of that, his last fight against Darren Till, while it was a great highlight reel finish and fight for him, it was also a style matchup that was, I think, naturally built for Woodley to excel in. Usman is not that. And also, Usman's probably the bigger of the two. I think he's the bigger guy of the two. I think he's the stronger guy of the two. This is a very hard fight to pick, Fu. I'm going to actually hedge myself here and not pick. I'm going to wait for you to make a pick and then get the guts to it. But I want to get your breakdown for this fight. Who are you going to pick? Woodley, Usman, in a fight of potential of a passing the torch moment in a lot of ways potentially. I am really hyped on this fight, even though I'll be honest, would have liked to see the Colby Covington fight more. But hey, this fight still is pretty fucking awesome. So your thoughts on it, Fu?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it, right? Mirror match. It is legitimately two top class wrestlers. Both of them, have pretty good stand up. I mean, quite honestly, like Usman's stand up is much better than it was when he first came around.
God.
Much better. His last fight, he was really dominant stand up. And so you go, is it youth and momentum versus like the aged fighter with maybe a better resume and been in some tougher moments? And I'm going to go with youth and momentum here because Usman, if you want to check, is on a 15-win fight streak.
Damn.
So,
picking Usman. I think it's for the upset. I don't have the betting odds.
It's going to be an upset. It would be an upset, but he's on a 15 or 13 fight win streak.
That's pretty long.
He's really just hot right now.
Well, he's one of those guys that I think he lost his first or second fight and hasn't lost since then. And he's beating good opponents like Leon Edwards. Probably before Leon Edwards, I think, really put it together as well. But he beat Leon Edwards, beat Rafael dos Anjos, after Colby Covington beat him. There's not his record doesn't scream to me. This is the fight I can point to, and I go, yes, he beats Woodley, right? I don't have that.
Yeah.
Similar to, not similar to Darren Till, but because Darren Till had that fight with Nicholas Dalby where I'm like, this is the fight where I know Woodley can beat him. You know what I mean? Like, there's that clear indicator, like, nope, he didn't pass this test. He's not going to win this fight. With Usman, he hasn't had the Woodley test yet. Holyfield Dos Anjos is very close to that. It's probably the closest you're going to get in this division without maybe it being a Colby Covington. That's probably about it in terms of just pure wrestling ability, and mixing up with the boxing. But again, I think Woodley is just slightly better when it comes to being a technician. I also think he's a little more savvier when it comes to picking his moments, picking his shots. I'm gonna go with Woodley here.
It's a hard fight. It's a 50-50 fight.
I don't know about this one, man. I feel like I'm also picking with my heart too because I like Woodley. I like Usman too. Don't get me wrong. Like, I really like Usman, but like Woodley he's grown on me in a lot of ways. I remember when he was in Strikeforce and he was rough. He was a lay and pray wrestler when that was like a common term thrown around on MMA chat rooms and shit. But then obviously he had the loss to Nate Marquardt. I think he's improved since then, dramatically. And on top of that, he's sort of hitting his stride at this late age. It's weird, if Woodley was 32 or 34 years old, right? If he's just a little bit younger, there's not that momentum passing the torch moment where we could see with Usman in my mind. I feel like it's a far more of an even fight, or I should say it's far more obvious that Woodley is the better fighter and therefore he should win. However, it does seem like there's this moment here with these two. Even though that is obviously an intangible X factor that, it's not going to really technically play out in the cage. But I think Woodley is going to struggle in the first couple rounds, I'll be honest. I think Woodley is going to have to deal with the pressure, the volume of Usman. Usman's output when it comes to wrestling, the amount of takedowns he is shooting, the amount of punches he is throwing is so far above the average to get a little bit of a statistical mindset right here. But it's so high that Woodley being the guy that's naturally hanging back, countering behind the double black line, trying to, he's actually using his back against the cage as a defensive tool. I think he's going to have some issues with Usman's pressure, Usman's grappling in the first couple rounds, unless he lands a clean counter, unless he lands that right hand and the fight shifts. But I think that moment happens in the third or fourth round. And again, if Usman catches that right hand, we haven't seen what will happen when a brutal, fast, explosive knockout artist like Woodley gets on him. Maybe knockout artist is a little bit too hyperbolic, but a guy that definitely has one-punch knockout power. I don't know if Usman really has that. Woodley does, and that might be the determining factor in this fight, but can't wait for it. Any last thoughts on Woodley, Usman, and this really good welterweight title clash?
I think that this is one of those fights that could be like fight of the night or like a snooze fest.
Oh,
right?
It's definitely yes.
Both of the guys are something like 90+% takedown defense. So like neither one of them are going to be easy to take down. It's going to be a lot of stand-up fighting. It's going to be a lot of a lot of technical clinch work, looking for opportunities, right?
And when they do get close, they're going to clinch up, try to go for takedowns. They might have a stalemate moment. Like you said, it's either going to be very entertaining, the style matchups are going to be great, or it's a lot of negating, a lot of making impasses for your opponent's sort of grappling advancements and not really looking to set up your own. It's one or the other. I don't see a middle ground with this fight at all.
No, I'm hoping for fight of the night. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for not a snoozer, but we'll see.
We'll see. That is true. Next fight on the card, another welterweight fight. Ben Askren making his UFC debut after the air quote trade with Demetrius Johnson in one championship, fighting Robbie Lawler in a fight that I think most people, when it was announced, weren't really excited about. They thought it was not a mismatch in terms of like, hey, Robbie Lawler can't hang with Ben Askren. More so of like, hey, this wasn't the right matchup to make in Ben Askren's first fight. There's other guys you could have made that would have just been a little more of a hype behind it than a Robbie Lawler. However, I like this matchup in a lot of ways. I think Robbie Lawler's counter wrestling game is enough to where we see if Ben Askren can still do what he did at the top level of Bellator way back in the day and do it in the UFC. Even though Robbie Lawler is a faded version of himself, he's still a adequate version of himself, still a top 10, top 15 guy in the division. On top of that, if Ben Askren cannot get this fight to the ground, Robbie Lawler is the guy to make him pay for that. And I am very curious to see what would happen there. Potentially, this is just Ben Askren getting him down for 3 rounds, a couple of takedowns each round, beating him up, and we see a clear unanimous decision for Ben Askren. That's probably the likely outcome, but Robbie Lawler could surprise us in this matchup. Fu, your thoughts on Ben Askren making his UFC debut against Robbie Lawler, former welterweight champion?
Yeah, when I first looked at this, I was thinking, like, obviously Askren is, like, highly touted. Everyone, he had the 3-year reign over at Bellator, then went to 1 and dominated over there. I think he's unbeaten in his entire career. But I was thinking, damn, Robbie Lawler's no bitch. Like, this is going to be a tough fight, right? Like, you would have thought his, like, debut would have been somebody that he could have maybe showed off on a little bit, right? Like, but this isn't going to be that fight. Lawler's very smart. He's a very seasoned veteran. He knows what he's doing in almost every instance of a fight, right? And I think it's going to be a very tough fight for Ben. I think it will be like a decision. I think a lot of people are going to not really shit on Ben Askren, but they're going to talk a little bit if he doesn't get a submission, because he's talked so much trash coming into the UFC, right? So if he's not completely dominant, it's not going to be great for him, So I'm going to pick Askren, obviously. I think he'll win a unanimous decision, but I think he's going to struggle in a lot of situations in this fight. And
again, it's going to be an indicator of what Ben Askren is in today's age, in the UFC level, and on top of that, what Robbie Lawler is in today's age. Ben Askren has beat guys like Douglas Lima, Jay Haran, Lyman Good, that level of opposition. Is Robbie Lawler better than that level of opposition in 2019? I don't know, and we're going to find something out about both guys in this fight, which is going to be interesting. On that alone, I don't think this fight's going to be the most entertaining fight, I will be honest, but it's definitely one that has a lot of significance for the division and for both men. Next on the card, Tisha Torres versus Willie Zhang. Willie Zhang on like an 18-fight winning streak right now. Phenomenal Chinese prospect. Tisha Torres, obviously, probably one of the perennial top 5 people at 115 pounds. Coming off back-to-back losses against Yana Jacek and Jessica Andrade, I believe. I could be wrong about that first loss. But I know
you're right.
All right. I like this matchup in a lot of ways. We get to see what Willie Zhang is because she's pretty fantastic in terms of prospect level. Like, I am truly excited to see where she is at. And Tisha Torres is definitely the opponent where if you are not ready for the top, you are going to look bad against Tisha Torres, who has improved with her striking, and obviously her wrestling has always been her bread and butter. But also, she's somebody that's been fighting for a very long time at the top. Her entire career has been at basically the top of the division. How much longer can she do that from an athletic standpoint? We talk about this, obviously, with boxing, not as much with MMA, but we should. Guys in lower weight classes, they have sort of a shorter window to capitalize on their careers, mainly because smaller weight class fighters are more reliant on their athleticism, on their speed, on their technique to really get them by. While the heavyweight division, no, you don't need to. Higher weight divisions, you don't really need to. Size, strength, power, those become far more determining factors for a fight than technique, speed, and athleticism. Again, I I haven't really picked yet. I'm going to pick Tisha Torres. I just don't see her losing 3 times in a row, especially against Zhang, who is not tested against this quality of opposition. But if she doesn't, if Zhang is somehow able to win and beat Tisha Torres, we have a new contender at strawweight, and I'm excited about that. Fu, your thoughts on this female fight?
Yeah, so another tough one to pick. Obviously, Zhang is on a big-time win streak. Torres lost 2 fights, but let's be real.
That's the very top of the division.
Very top of the division. Andrade's about to fight Namajunas, right? And, I mean, Joanna,
longest reigning, either the second or the longest reigning women's champion in UFC history.
Yeah. So I don't think those are knocks against her. You put yourself in a fight against that level of talent, you're going to lose some fights. So I think Torres is going to win. I don't think it really is going to mean much for Zhang. She'll bounce back. But like you said, Torres has just always been a great competitor. Wrestling wise, she's got it over Zhang. It's going to be a fun fight. It's going to probably go the full 3 rounds. It's going to be like a unanimous decision type fight where we're going to see a lot of moments where I think Zhang's going to look really good. But I think ultimately the experience and the sheer willpower of Torres will just get her through the fight, get the win.
And plus, I think the grappling advantage is far too much for Tisha Torres' side here. Not that Zhang has not proven herself against some grapplers in MMA, like Jessica Aguilar is a decent grappler, but she's no Tisha Torres. And Danielle Taylor is a striker by trade in all sense and purposes, and a small one. She's an atom weight. Tisha Torres is, even though she's probably not the tallest strawweight, she's a very muscular, strong woman in that division. Probably one of the stronger pound-for-pound women in that division, up there with the Jessica Andrade, maybe like a Claudia Gadelha. She's one of the stronger people in that division. I think she'll be able to take down and beat up Zhang for 3 rounds. When they are standing, I think she will be able to either match Zhang or actually outpoint her. Honestly, I think she has the ability to even be better on the feet. This is just a little bit too soon, in my opinion, for Zhang. I think a couple step-ups before this would have been better. A Felice Herring, Angela Hill, somebody of that caliber way before Tisha Torres. I think this was, and maybe that's why they gave Tisha Torres this opponent, because it is one of those like, hey, this should be a tune-up for you, Tisha. If it's not, we have another contender in the division now. And
yeah, it's kind of win-win for them, right? Because if Torres looks really good, they can throw her in some big fights again. If Zhang looks really good, it's like, well, shit, here we go. We got a winner here. We can throw this.
And plus, I mean, the UFC has been looking for Chinese talent for a very long time, just like everyone, like in combat sports. Everyone's looking for a Chinese talent because look at Bob Arum with Zhu Shiming for years and years. How long did he prop up Zhu Shiming as like the gateway to China? Because there's a billion people over there with a lot of money.
And now Golden Boy got Susan.
Zhu Shan, the great Zhu Shan. Let's get to Cody Garbrandt making his comeback against Pedro Munoz. A fight that I am actually quite worried about from a matchmaking perspective because similar to like Torres versus Zhang, Torres and Garbrandt coming off back-to-back losses, right? Garbrandt coming off back-to-back KO losses. Torres coming off back-to-back decision losses. And they are obviously both thrown in attempted tune-up fights, right? I would say the Torres-Zhang fight is a better attempt at a tune-up fight than the Pedro Munoz fight. Pedro Munoz, while he is not particularly great at anything, he is a scrappy guy, really decent striking, really good wrestling, really good grappling. A guy that has only lost to the very top of the sport, the Jimmy Rivera's of the world. Like those are the level of guys he loses to, right? And he has never lost by anything but decision. And I think it's 3 or 4 losses. So he's an extremely tough and durable competitor on top of that. And plus his win against Brian Carey in his last fight was really impressive. Finished him in the second round, I think, with a body kick or something like that. Just really good stuff from Munoz. This could be a dangerous fight for Cody Garbrandt in my mind. This could be potentially a fight that we don't see as, or maybe they did not see as dangerous, but once Cody Garbrandt's in there and he can't really style on Munoz like he wants, and Munoz is just in his face, constantly throwing, constantly pressuring him, that could, play recipe to an upset in my mind. But I'm still leaning Garbrandt. I think Garbrandt is still the better technician of the two. I think he's still the better striker of the two. And whatever grappling acumen that Munoz has, I think Garbrandt is skilled enough to either negate that or at least be able to get up off the floor enough times to be effective on the feet. But this is going to be a tough fight and honestly going to make Garbrandt not look that good, in my opinion. Your thoughts on this, Fu?
I think Garbrandt will win this pretty easily.
Oh, wow. We differ in opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean, takedown defense, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but Garbrandt's got excellent takedown defense.
Yes.
Pedro only has like about a 20% to 30% takedown ratio. So I think he's not really going to trouble Garbrandt enough to really put Garbrandt off where he's not just going to be focused on, beating the shit out of him with stand up, right? Mm-hmm. And that really is how you beat a striker. You have to be able to throw him off and make him worried that you're going to take him down and then submit him. So I don't think that will exist in this matchup. So I think Cody's going to be able to do whatever he wants on the stand-up game. I think Pedro's talented, but like you said, it just might be the wrong fight for him right now. Plus, I think Cody's going to want to make a big comeback, especially after being knocked out twice. I mean, like you said, again, only to the top talent. But, I think a lot of people, I think it was kind of a 50-50 with Dillashaw, right? So no one expected that.
It didn't turn out that way, though. I mean, we got. I mean, the first fight was a second-round knockout. The first fight was a first-round knockout.
Yeah.
Now he's coming in there against a guy that's on a win streak that just finished a top 10 guy. I don't know. It's a risky fight in my mind for Cody Garbrandt. You're facing a guy that's never been finished before, never been stopped, has only lost by very narrow point decisions to the very top guys. This could be the wrong matchup for Cody Garbrandt in his comeback fight, in my opinion. But obviously, we will find out on Saturday. Moving on, Jeremy Stephens versus Zabit Magomedsharipov, a fight that I'm really excited for. Until I did hear that Jeremy Stephens was dealing with mental illness, dealing with suicidal thoughts after the Jose Aldo loss. And that is concerning in a lot of ways. Jeremy Stephens is a guy that has always been, I'm going to bite down my mouthpiece, swing for the fences. I have some sneaky boxing ability, but I'm a brawler. I'm going to be in your face. I'm going to try to knock you out. And can you really do that when you are dealing with mental illness? And this is no knock on him. It's just a legit concern. Like, is it the best thing for him to be fighting right now? Go check out the Errol. I think it's the Errol Hawani show. I don't think it's the MMA Hour with Jeremy Stephens with this interview when he talked about it. Make your own assumption about it. But again, it's just a concern now that we have a guy that is talked about being suicidal, talked about dealing with mental illness post a loss that was recent, his last fight, and now heading into a fight that is really tough against Zabit Magomedsharipov, who could be one of the next guys at featherweight. Let's be honest, a guy that has tremendous grappling ability, tremendous submission skills. On top of that, a really free-flowing, artistic striking game that is always improving. Jeremy Stephens, if he's dialed in, I think he gives Zabit a lot of issues. I think he doesn't really play with the spinning shit. I think Jeremy Stephens is in his face throwing heavy shots, and Zabit is going to struggle with that. We saw him struggle with Kyle Bochniak, I think was his name, a lot. And I think, no offense, Kyle, but you don't have the power of Jeremy Stephens. So if Jeremy Stephens is dialed in, I'm picking Jeremy Stephens. But because he's not in my mind, and because he has been dealing with a lot of mental stuff outside the cage, I'm picking Zabit Magomedsharipov by decision in a really fun fight. And I hope that Jeremy Stephens is okay. Prayers and thoughts to you, man. Obviously, in combat sports, mental illness is probably an under-talked about subject, but I think in the Tyson Fury, post-Tyson Fury era, so to speak, I think it's now becoming more of a conversation that's a good thing. So, again, concerning that he's dealing with this and stepping in against a very dangerous prospect. So I'm picking Zabit decision. I think he will be able to maybe just pick apart a unfocused Jeremy Stephens, to be honest. I think that's just going to play a factor into it. Fu, your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, Zabit's a great wrestler, like you said. I mean, I think throughout this fight, if he wants to take Stephens down, he will. Like you said, just Stephens not being 100%, even coming out kind of pre the fight and talking about these things. And just if you listen to his tone in some of those interviews and how he's talking, he doesn't sound like a man that's really preparing to go in and win a war, right? He's fighting a war on a different front right now. So I think Zabit will win this. He's got some really good wins. He's got a lot of momentum right now. He's a talented striker too. I think he's like a 50 to 60% accuracy on his striking. Like he does some pretty crazy shit too. So I think it's going to be a really fun fight. Like you said, if, you know, when Luke Campbell fought Linares, his dad died that week, and he still came in and put on a hell of a show. So like a guy like Jeremy Stephens has been in the game a long time. He's got a lot of fights. You know, he may come in and this might be like some of us where like you have some bad shit. You go to work and you forget about it.
Absolutely,
you know?
Yes.
So he might just go in there and put on a show and, you know, prove us all wrong. But I think Zabit should be the favorite, and that's who I'm going to pick.
Whenever like the mental side of the game is in question, even just in question, not that it's confirmed or anything that like, hey, like this, it's a major concern, but like just that it's in question. That's a major red flag, especially in this game when it is a game of inches. It's a game of milliseconds, right? You have to be 100% dialed in. If you're not, you're going to look flat. You just are. You're not going to be, you're not going to be pulling on the trigger like you should because your mind's not 100% there. And again, when that's in question, hard to pick that guy. It just is. Another fight on the preliminary card on ESPN, Misha Cirkunov versus Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker obviously coming in back off 2 weeks. And his last fight was against, who was it? And it was a spinning back fist knockout. It was amazing. Went on to perform a striptease in the cage. Depending who you ask, that was either amazing or not amazing. MMA women definitely seem to like it on Twitter. So shout out to Johnny Walker. Do your thing. But I am intrigued by this fight in a lot of ways. Johnny Walker is the total like Brazilian bro. You know what I mean, Fu? Like he is definitely putting way too much gel in his hair. Definitely like is not going to the beach, but definitely doing spray tan, right? Like he's a Brazilian bro, but he is exciting. He is creative in the cage. I mean, great knockout power. Misha Cirkunov, a little more traditional from a technician side of it. I think he's obviously the better grappler of the two as well. I think Cirkunov should win this fight, but I'm picking Johnny Walker. I think Johnny Walker is going to pull off some crazy knockout spinning shit and surprise us all because that's what Johnny Walker does. And until he faces the very top, I don't think that's going to be an issue. And I don't think Misha Cirkunov, a guy that has been caught with really simple stuff and been knocked out, a la the Volkan Ozdemir fight, I'm picking Johnny Walker to throw some spinning shit and knock out Misha Cirkunov by the first round, second round, and go on to do another striptease performance in the cage. Shout out to Johnny Walker. And also, one of the best names in MMA history, I will say. You are born with Johnny Walker as your name, you are set for life. But anyways, Fu, your thoughts on Cirkunov versus Walker in the ESPN preliminary card?
First thing first, I wish my parents were cool enough to name me Johnny Walker.
Facts.
Like,
yes.
Fuck, bro. Like, dude's got the best parents. Second thing, he really reminds me of this guy I used to go work with at GameStop when MMA started really getting big, like mid 2000, right?
Quickly, just because I said I didn't remember the name. It was Justin Ledet, who was a flat earther, and that makes me so happy.
Got flattened.
Also, he did knock out Khalil Roundtree, which was a shocking KO and a really fantastic one. with an elbow in the first round right before that, and Henrique da Silva. The guy's been on just a little tiny tear. I'll be honest. Shout out to him. Back to you, Phil.
Also, he's like almost 100% striking accuracy. Have you looked at that?
What?
They literally have him at like 93% striking accuracy or some shit. Like how? It's like,
well, the sample size must be so small, right?
Yeah.
It must be
but
just
zero
his UFC
takedowns. I don't think the guy has a single takedown in the, in the UFC. So the way I think this will go is like, if Misha gives him trouble and has him obviously able to take him down and grapple him consistently and slow him down and wear him out, it's going to be a really long night. But like you said, if he pulls some spinning shit early and knocks him out, it's kind of like one of those fights. And I like Johnny Walker because, hell, you need a fun guy that's going to, light the division up, right? Give it some personality.
And again, for those that are more casual, this is the division. This is 205. This is light heavyweight. This is Jon Jones. This is a division that desperately needs some new names, some new life in it. So if Johnny Walker comes out of the blue and becomes a Brazilian superstar, God, man, we are blessed. We are too blessed in this sport.
And I'm going to apologize for this in advance, but how are you Brazilian and have no takedowns? Like, aren't you supposed to be like,
come on,
good at that?
No. I mean,
like
Edson Barboza, he had to go to the U.S. to get
grappling,
to get better grappling training, right? Junior dos Santos, even though I would say, improved his jiu-jitsu over time, he was a boxer by trade, right? I think he was an amateur boxer, right? His dream was to be an Olympic gold medalist in boxing at one point. So not everyone, right? Of course, you have the Gracie family. Of course, you have like Damian Maia, Jacare. You have obviously that history, but then you have Shootbox. The Shootbox team. And you don't know what that is? Just Google it. Trust me, it's CHUTE, and it's Shootbox, right? You have Vanderlei Silva, Anderson Silva, Shogun Hua, all those guys back in the day, back when they all had hair and everything.
Oh shit.
Back when they're all like 18, 20, they were all part of the same team. And that was the Muay Thai side of it, right? Because you had the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu side of Brazil, then you have the Muay Thai side of Brazil. And that's really the two branches, so to speak, of martial arts in Brazil. Unlike, let's say, in the U.S., you have wrestling, right? Boxing, U.S. boxing. And that would probably be your two foundational martial arts of the United States, right? Brazil, it's Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai.
Oh, that's pretty badass. Okay.
That's, again, the Vanderlei Silvas, the Shogun Huas, the Anderson Silvas, those aren't traditionally grapplers, right? Those are all Brazilians. Jose Aldo, he's not a grappler by trade. He's a Muay Thai guy.
Also, if you guys are going to Google stuff and you want to just Google something fun, what was that MMA arm wrestling? Did you see the thing I put?
I didn't see that. I saw you send it. I didn't watch it because I'm like, I'm not going to watch this.
Bro, that shit was crazy. You got to watch it.
Good, man. How many times I've been sent links of like knights fighting, like 10-on-10 knights, and like, oh, this is the future of MMA. I'm like, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's not. No.
This was just funny. I didn't think it was the future of MMA. But might be the future of how we pick who plays music before the shows.
That's never changing. It's a clear Stalin-like dictatorship of that shit, let's be honest. Digressing, though. I don't care about the Cody Stamann, Alejandro Perez fight. No offense to those guys. Just fundamentally do not care about the matchup. Diego Sanchez versus Mickey Gall, though, I do care about. Because Diego Sanchez is, come on, a legend, right, in the sport. One of the guys that obviously is not a UFC champion, not a former UFC champion, but a legend in the sport. A guy that's put on fight of the year after fight of the year for so many years. Probably the closest thing to MMA's Arturo Gatti. Honestly, like he might be the closest thing to that in terms of just like the mythical sense to it, the fan adoration of Diego Sanchez is similar to Arturo Gatti. But Mickey Gall, goddamn, he's going to just piece up Diego Sanchez. Diego Sanchez is old, decrepit, out of shape, completely shot. Mickey Gall, while fundamentally flawed, is a young, athletic, gigantic welterweight. However he decides to win, he will win. And RIP Diego Sanchez. And please, for God's sake, retire. Fu, your thoughts on Diego Sanchez in his retirement fight, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, Mickey Gall looked good in his last fight. I think, like you said, Diego Sanchez just obviously past his prime. It always shocks me sometimes how long people fight, but yeah, it should be, like you said, Mickey Gall winning however he wants. Hopefully, Diego Sanchez gets out of this perfectly fine, right? And gets to retire happy and healthy. But yeah, I just don't think Gall's got too much to worry about here.
Agreed. That's all I have for that card. I briefly mentioned that there is a UFC Fight Pass portion of the card. Edmund Shabazian versus Charles Byrd. Gina Mazzini versus Macy Chasen. Marlon Vera versus Frankie Science. That's a decent fight. Poliana Viana versus Hannah Cyphers. Not a bad women's fight right there. Should be an entertaining scrap. But I don't care to break down any of those fights. Jamie Stevens versus Zabit Magomedsharipov. Misha Cirkunov versus Johnny Walker. Cody Stamann versus Alejandro Perez. Diego Sanchez versus Mickey Gall. That is the ESPN portion of the card, the preliminary portion of the card. The main card, pay-per-view, starts with obviously Cody Garbrandt versus Pedro Munoz, Tisha Torres versus Willie Zhang, Robbie Lawler versus Ben Askren, Tyron Woodley versus Kamaru Usman, and of course Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith. Should be a really fun one. Let's move on, though, to UFC Prague and quickly wrap up that card, as quickly as possible. Thiago Santos versus Jan Blachowicz, obviously in a TKO finish in the third round. Santos, sort of like Anthony Smith, a guy that is sort of a perennial top 20 guy in another weight class below, realized, hey, 205 has no one and is filled with decrepit old people that I can beat up, has moved up and doesn't have to cut as much weight and is blowing out the competition. This was a fun fight, though, for as long as it lasted, for the two rounds and a minute. But I thought Thiago Santos just was the better technician on the feet, was landing the better shots. And obviously when he did land that, I think it was a counter right hook knockout as Blachowicz was advancing. Just a beautiful shot. And then obviously the 20, 30 punches of ground and pound before the ref stopped it. Come on, Herb Dean. You could have stopped that a little bit sooner. But Santos picking up the big TKO win, probably solidifying he is the next light heavyweight contender if the Daniel Cormier fight does not materialize. But your thoughts on this fight, Fugatti? Santos defeating Blachowicz via TKO in the third round.
This is a really cool fight. It was a good dynamic, too. A very disciplined fighter versus like a just fucking wild man in the ring, right? And I wondered if Santos was going to be able to put it together, or if he was just going to get like out disciplined where, Blachowicz was like just more disciplined, putting stuff together, really holding himself back and not getting in a moment where he would get hurt. And then Santos caught him with that great, the great counter shot as he was stepping backwards too, which was pretty wild to me that he had that much power moving backwards. But overall, yeah, it was a really, really, really good fight on kind of a mediocre card. The Prague card had some good fights on it, but it wasn't an exceptional card. But this Thiago Santos win, I thought, was really, really a nice win. And anytime a guy has that much power walking backwards, it's pretty special because most people can't knock people out walking backwards, dodging shots, and it was a great counter. I think you're right. I think this is probably the next contender. Assuming, like you said, the DC fight doesn't come around, but let's hope the DC fight happens. I think that'll be fun.
I largely agree, even though I didn't hear obviously because all of it because I needed to get some water / juice. But I probably agree with everything you stated. Santos probably the contender, and again, really fun fight. It was an interesting style matchup, striking matchup between the two. Co-main event, Stefan Struve picking up the submission win over Marcos Rogerio de Lima via submission arm triangle choke after a very scary first round. I think he landed 0 shots in 8, I think like 60-plus shots in that round, was severely hurt. I don't know how he made it the full 5 minutes in that round, and then obviously in the next round, just boom, takedown, submission. It would seem like it was over rather easily, even though he was severely hurt. And on top of that, obviously, he sort of announced his quasi-retirement, left the gloves in the cage as customary. He sort of walked it back slightly in some vague comments, but I really hope Stefan Struve retires. He's been a guy that's put on great fights for a very long time in the heavyweight division, a guy that never really capitalized, obviously, on his physical traits, his natural talent, the way we would have liked. But he's always been a perennial top 10, top 15 heavyweight. And again, has been in the UFC for a very long time. Probably over a decade at least, to be honest. And shout out to him. He's been in the UFC since he was like 18, 19 years old. He's a lifer. When lifers used to be a thing for the UFC, like Rory McDonald, right? Who, 4 fights in his career, he was in the UFC at 18, 19 years old. Mixing up with the greats. Stefan Struve was like that. And he was a 7-foot Dutch guy doing it when that was like, oh my God, the rebirth of Sammy Schilt, right? We were all thinking that. Didn't pan out that way. But again, shout out to Stefan Struve. Great career. One that I have personally enjoyed. I've always been a big fan of Stefan Struve. So I like this fight. And again, shout out to Struve, the skyscraper. Fu, your thoughts on this co-main event?
Yeah, it was definitely the first round. I saw what you were talking about him being like a Robert Easter style fighter, giving up his height a little too much, right? The submission was nice. It was real quick in the second round too, like 2 minutes in or something. He handled himself pretty well, especially after taking that beating in the first round. And I just hope he retires, because I think once someone starts to think that retirement's for them, just retire.
Yes.
Because fighting's something you can't half-ass. You cannot go in and be like half in, half out.
Unless you're Adrian Broner.
Right? Because then you just make fucking crazy money, but you get your ass kicked every fight anyways. But it's different in UFC. Like, the beating, you don't want to take the beating that the Hammer Hamill took from Jones. You just don't, bro. That's not how, you don't want to go out that way, So just, if he wants to retire, he should just retire. He's had a good career, like you said. He's got like 35 fights or something.
A long career, very long one.
Just go. Just enjoy your life.
He entered the UFC a decade ago, February 21st, 2009. Literally a decade ago. Get this, right? We're going to talk about this with Max Holloway fight coming up, right, with Dustin Poirier, but like, we need to have a conversation about like, hey, this is like your worst debut fight you could ever imagine, right? Do you know who are you looking at the record right now?
No, I'm not.
Okay. That's good. You know this name, right? He's a relevant player in the heavyweight division to this day, okay? Guess who Stefan Struve's UFC debut was? Guess.
He's a player now.
A former champion.
Former champion. Holy shit.
I need a soundbite.
Who?
You're not even going to guess? I'm not going to give like one name.
No, I can't think of who it would be.
Sad.
But you knew I would be wrong anyways. You had the soundbite queued up.
Because it's right there. Junior Dos Santos was his first UFC fight.
Oh, wow.
This was a prime. This was JDS a year or two before the Kane fight, right? This was Junior Dos Santos on his way to the title shot. Junior Dos Santos knocked him out in less than a minute.
Bro, you need a better manager. Like if your introduction to the UFC is Junior Dos Santos when he's like the man,
right before being the man, being the man, he was a contender. He was. Who had he just beat? He had just beat. Oh my God, Junior Dos Santos had just beat Fabricio Verdum via KO in a minute.
Good Lord.
Oh my God. Yo, heavyweight used to be insane, man.
Let's throw this kid in there. See how he.
I'll be honest. Like heavyweight always kind of sucked, right? But like the early 2000s, late 90s heavyweight MMA division, fantastic. And I'll be honest, like 2008, 2009 to about 2013 heavyweight division, also sort of fantastic. I will admit. People don't talk about it as much because it's not really the same. It's not revered the same way as the golden age of the heavyweight division with Fedor, Crow Cop, and Big Nog being the big three on Pride. And then you had the Randy Couture, Tim Sylvia, who else? Marco Ruas. You sort of had those guys in the UFC. But when we had Kane, Brock, JDS, Verdum, Alistair Overeem, Fedor was still a relevant player. Like, you go down the list. That was an insane heavyweight division at that time. I mean, Bigfoot Silva, Mark Hunt. Like, it was, God, heavyweight low-key has been slapping for a bit, even though recently has not at all. Goddamn. But digressing, back to the card itself. The only other fight I want to make mention of is Peter Yan versus John Dodson. Peter Yan getting the unanimous decision against John Dodson. First off, Dodson, whatever hairstylist you had, fire them immediately. That was awful. That was
Bro, it was so comical. Every shot, his hair got bigger. You know, it was like he get popped by Jan, and then his like hair would go like a little bit more.
It looked like
a little bit more.
It looked like we had a Russian ginger fighting a very small 5'2" Gene Simmons. Like, that's literally what it looked like. I don't want to see that in the cage ever again. However, I did like this fight. It could have been better, but this was a very John Dodson-like performance. He's a guy that went from one of the perennial contenders, top 5 guys at flyweight and bantamweight, having a win against TJ Dillashaw, current bantamweight champion, knockout win, to a guy that kind of just relies on like single shot counters and a very faded athleticism, to be honest. And it kind of becomes like a negative fighter, like in the fact that he sort of creates lack of volume. He creates lack of combinations from both him and his opponents in his fights, just based off his style, based off his movement. And that was kind of boring against Peter Yan, who's traditionally a very exciting guy. But it was a good win to see. I think Peter Yan needed this sort of look and needed this fight. That's really all I have to say about it. Fu, any thoughts on this or the rest of the card? Because I don't really have much else to say.
No, I was excited about this fight because I know Dodson, gatekeeper is probably not the right word, but Jan needed a good win to prove that he'd be up in that upper echelon of the bantamweights, and I think he deserves some better names to see what he can do. He's got a great stand-up game, so yep. I like that guy a lot. And like you said, Dodson just sort of a negative fighter. So, still very quick and athletic, though. I mean, he gave Jan a very tough fight, but I think he's just kind of one of those guys you got to get through to get to the next place, And I think Jan did it, and in good enough fashion, he should get a good name at bantamweight. See what he can do up there.
Absolutely agree. If just throwing out matchups, if they make the TJ Marlon Moraes fight next, and Aljamain Sterling is free, I would really, really enjoy an Aljamain Sterling Peter Yan fight. I'll be honest. Put on a pay-per-view main card or just an ESPN co-main, maybe something like that. Maybe even an ESPN Plus main event. Put that fucker in Russia. Who cares? Put Peter Yan as the main event. Have Aljamain Sterling be the brash American coming over there with the chain on and everything to Moscow. That would draw some ratings over there in the Kremlin. But digressing, I have nothing else to say about this card in particular. Do you, or you want to move on?
No, man, we're good. That's a good fight though. Sterling versus Yan. That's a good fight.
I
Sterling would win.
Hey, UFC, just hire me, man. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Just hire me. But breaking news, I think it was yesterday, the day before, Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier to headline UFC 236 for the interim lightweight title. Goddamn. I will say this. I don't know how I feel about this yet. I've had several days now to sort of form an opinion about it. I don't have one yet. I know that's kind of like criminal to say on a podcast when you've had days to prepare, but I've had days to prepare and I'm still sort of conflicted about how I think about this fight. Max Hall, just sort of tackling it from different angles, and Fu, jump in whenever you want. Max Holloway moving up a division. I have thoughts on that. I have conflicting thoughts about that. I think Max Holloway at 145, if he can make the weight division in a healthy manner, I think he's better suited for that. I think he's better suited for reigning right there at this point in time. Lightweight is already completely congested, and him adding his hat to sort of the mix, I think is adding more congestion to the lightweight division, honestly. But if Max Holloway is in a manner of, hey, it's just for my health, I want to move up in weight, I'm okay with it. We can move on. This fight in particular, this matchup, I don't know if it's the right matchup. Not that it's not a fun fight. I think Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier 2 fight is insanely fun. And speaking of, sort of switching back to our last conversation, UFC debuts, this was Max Holloway's debut with the UFC was against Dustin Poirier, a guy that already had a documentary on Netflix about him. Think about that. When Dustin Poirier came into the UFC, Fu, he had a documentary about him already on Netflix. Fu?
Are you here?
Oh, your camera's frozen up.
Goofy.
How about this, Fu? Jump out and jump back in, okay? Okay, Fu? Just do that.
Gotcha.
Just do that. Okay. But digressing back to what I was talking about. Max Holloway's UFC debut was against Dustin Poirier, a guy that was already near contendership, even though he took a long time to even sort of not get a belt, though, because he kept getting very significant key losses at the wrong time. But this is a fun fight. I don't know if it's the one that needs to happen right now. I'll be honest. I think they're making it purely to A, sell pay-per-view, B, keep the division going because Khabib is playing hardball with them. They don't like that. I think this is an attempt to sort of piss off Khabib. On top of it, I mean, I don't know if this is the right matchup for Poirier or Holloway. I think a Poirier-Nate Diaz fight, if you can run that back, you go do it. You try to make that fight again. That was the right fight to make. It was a fresh matchup. It made sense. On top of that, Fu's back. There we go. Fugatti.
Sorry.
What was that?
What
was that, Fu?
Can you hear me?
Yes. You don't have the greatest internet right now, it seems.
Oh, bogus.
It's okay. We can try. It's okay. Holloway, Poirier. Again, I'm not 100% certain about what my opinion is about this fight. And again, the interim belt attached to it, I hate. I really fundamentally hate. If this was a one-off fight or if this was just Holloway moving up to the division, I don't think it needs an interim belt attached to it. I really don't think it does. I don't think that interim belt adds any pay-per-view buys to this fucking event. Sorry. Similar to the Adesanya-Gastelum fight. I think the reason they do it is to A, fighters get a little paycheck boost, allegedly. On top of it, I think it's easier to make these fights. When certain fighters want to sort of stick out and wait for a title shot like a Gastelum, like a Poirier, like others, it's easier to sort of make a in-between fight when you can add an interim belt attached to it, unfortunately. On top of it, obviously Tony Ferguson should have been the first man to be around this, but he didn't want to fight for an interim title. Why? Because he already had one, and they stripped him of it. So, I don't know. Fu, Your thoughts on this fight overall? Again, it's the individual matchup itself I'm not upset with too much. It's obviously going to be a very fun fight, but it just seems like the wrong match to make at this point in time. Fu, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm with Jay. I don't like.
Yeah, Jay in the chat saying this fight is blasphemy in all caps. Jay is.
I mean, look,
he's big mad. I understand.
I like Max at 145 better, but like you said, if it's health, fine. But it feels more like it might be money. It feels like it might be that this is more of like the money division.
It is,
or something, you know. Which I don't really dig because, like you said, it's stacked already. There's just it's pretty.
This would be the equivalent of Regis Prograis jumping up to 147, and instead of Spence Crawford happening next, we get Spence Regis Prograis or Crawford Prograis. And while that fight, those fights aren't bad, right? Those matchups aren't innately bad. But if you're telling me I can either get Spence Crawford or Spence Prograis or Crawford Prograis, I want Spence Crawford. Give me Prograis against somebody else lower down the division. I can wait for that. Same with sort of this fight. With Max Holloway, I can have him taking somebody else, maybe like a Joe Duffy, honestly, if his intent is just to move up a weight class. Take a sort of tune-up showcase at that division. Allow Poirier and Tony Ferguson to fight for a non-belt main event on pay-per-view. Make everyone happy. Pay them the right amount. And we move on. And I think everyone's happy. But that's not what we're getting. We're getting a Band-Aid in a way. This feels like a Band-Aid for a lot of different, wounds that the UFC has right now, whether it's at lightweight or 145. And unfortunately, like you said, lightweight is just the money division right now. You got Conor there, you got Khabib there, you got Nate there. Those are three guys that if you fight them, you're making money. A lot of money. I understand why Max is doing it. I don't think it's the right thing to do, but hey, I understand it. Make your money. Hey, it's
I really wonder, for Tony, when you've done everything, if Khabib comes off suspension and Tony doesn't get that fight, realistically, he's got to just be almost wanting to just leave the UFC at that point, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hell, before this fight was announced, Dustin Poirier was threatening to leave.
Yeah.
He was on Twitter saying, hey, just let me leave, right? You guys won't give me a fight. Obviously, the Nate fight fell through. And before this fight, nothing was happening. You have the whole Khabib suspension that is obviously putting a hold on the division. Conor has his own suspension, but let's be honest, Conor and Donald Cerrone are probably going to fight and do their own thing. And that kind of be its own sort of nexus and be devoid of the lightweight title picture in a way because it's a Conor fight. So you had Tony. Tony was there. Like you said, he's done everything. He's been the interim champion before. He's already been in this position. If he doesn't get that shot and he gets passed over for the obvious Holloway Poirier winner now for the interim belt, if you're Tony, look for a Bellator, look for a PFL, look for a one championship. Honestly, you're not valued. The company is not valuing you. Move on. You have to do that at some point, right?
Yeah, it's crazy to me too because he's one of the most interesting, entertaining people in the UFC. He's consistently doing something that's holy shit, he really just pulled that off, And I don't know. If he doesn't get the fight that he wants, which is the Khabib fight for the belt, not an interim belt, the actual belt, I don't see him sticking around.
Well, what does the UFC do? Let's say Max Holloway beats Dustin Poirier, right, in a rematch. Right now, he's the simultaneous, featherweight champion and interim lightweight champion. And obviously, the Khabib fight was supposed to happen at one point. Remember, don't forget that. It was scheduled, and then obviously Max Holloway couldn't make it on short notice, etc. A whole other story. But I could definitely see the UFC foregoing a Tony Ferguson Khabib fight for a Max Holloway fight. It probably means more dollars in their mind. Honestly. Jay in the chat saying this fight announcement got me triggered, bruh. What happened to the good old days when fighters wanted to dominate and clean out weight divisions? Money. Money, money, money. Like Fu said, the lightweight division is the money division. We don't think about that as much in the MMA sense as we do in boxing, but we should, because that's the new paradigm. If you have a money division, fighters are going to naturally try to allocate themselves to that division. That's why Cerrone, I think, sort of went back down to 155. Not only because I think he was struggling with the bigger guys at 170, but on top of it, you're going to make more money at 155. You have a deeper division with better names. There are more marquee names on top of it. Like, it just makes common sense.
And let's be real. Conor Cowboy is a great fight. It's going to sell a lot of fucking pay-per-views. So,
well, what does a Holloway Poirier fight sell?
I don't think
250.
Yeah, it's not it's like, it seems like they're doing this just maybe to keep those two guys happy.
Yes.
Like, it's like, hey, here's a fight. And then Ferguson's just on the outside, like always. Like, oh,
this seems like you're throwing a shiny trinket at like a couple kids to keep them distracted from what you're doing. Like, that's what it seems like to me. It's like, oh, go play with this trinket while I go and do sinister stuff and make most of the money.
Well, keep in mind, like, I don't think any of us are upset with Holloway or Poirier. Like,
no.
You guys got to continue to do your thing. And if Holloway's going to make more money and secure the bag and go to 155, do your thing.
And Jay, and correct me if I'm wrong, I bet you would agree with me on this. If this was an old school one-off fight where it was like Max Holloway going up in division, fighting a relevant contender, and then coming back down to 145 just to stay busy and make money, I'm not mad with that. Anderson Silva did that a ton of times. About James Irvin, Stephan Bonner, Forrest Griffin. Like, the Forrest Griffin fight was massive. People forget, like, that saved Silva's reputation for a while. Like, that was off the back of the Thales Letis and Damian Maia debacle in Abu Dhabi, where it was, you literally had Dana White throwing the belt in the cage and saying, you can put it on. That was the worst fight I've ever seen, and walking away from the cage. Anderson Silva went from that to knocking out Forrest Griffin in Matrix-like fashion in one round just because he moved up a weight division and found a fun fight. Like, Max Holloway is not obviously in that predicament where he's public enemy number one by the UFC, but this is a fun one-off if it is that, but it's clearly not in my mind. The interim title being attached to it, I think, indicates something. On top of that, Max Holloway is a big guy. Like, I think Max is just moving up to 155. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you, and I think he's going to stay at 155. If you look at it, if you get a Khabib fight, if you get a Conor fight, hell, if you get a Cowboy fight, like, those are all money fights. Like, every one of those guys bring in money. You know, they're all, I mean, Khabib's not a company man, but Conor's definitely a company man. Cowboy's a company man.
No.
He got bigger than the division, but I think he still is someone who, like, gets his way when he wants.
Well, that is not the definition of a company man.
Sorry, let me rephrase that. Not a company man in terms of doing whatever the UFC says, but he's someone that the company is always going to want people to fight and make money off of.
Those are two completely different things. Donald Cerrone is a company man.
Is a company man, 100%.
Conor McGregor is not. Yeah. Khabib is not. They all might be stars in their own sort of degrees, but no, one of them is a company man. Two of them are not. There's a very clear distinction. I just want to make sure that I know.
Sorry.
I know you misspoke, but people out there might not understand. I have nothing really else to say about this other than, hey, look, UFC 236, the card of interim belts, man. You have Israel Adesanya versus Kelvin Gastelum for the interim belt, and Holloway versus Poirier for the interim belt, when both champions are due to be back this year. Khabib's suspension's up by, like, what, August? July? Right, 7-month suspension.
Oh, good.
And on top of that, I mean, Whitaker shouldn't be out too long. It's a hernia surgery. Like, no offense, but those don't take that long. My 4-year-old son had a hernia surgery like a month ago, man. He has been running around like a day after, okay? Like, come on. Like, let's keep it real here. Like, there's no need for these interim belts. When you could have just had both those fights on that card without belts attached, give them the pay increase, and I think you make the hardcore fans happy, you make the casuals happy, and you make, guess what, the fighters happy as well. Trifecta, and you still do the same fucking pay-per-view buy rate as you would with these interim belts attached.
Yeah, the surprising thing for me, coming from being more of a boxing hardcore and seeing like the difference in, like the IBO, the WBA, the WBO, the WBC, it's like UFC doesn't have that, but the interim belts almost act like that, where it's like, oh my God, just don't fuck things up. It's more of a problem than a solution, because now you got Ferguson sitting, waiting for his shot at Khabib, which he's earned and should have easily. And then you're going to have two other guys fighting for an interim belt that gives them the fight against Khabib. So it's like, you're just creating problems in a division that you could have just made a really good fight and then had those guys fight whoever wins between Khabib and Ferguson. Like, you could have made it easy on yourself. Now you're just making future problems where fighters are going to have something, they're going to have ammunition to bitch about.
Agreed. And plus, I mean, it's so obvious that the fan base is like completely rejecting the idea of interim belts. And it's so funny seeing like seeing MMA fans react to like just the proliferation of belts and championships in the UFC, and it's like, man, just wait, it's gonna get worse. The UFC could easily make it so much worse, and you guys have no idea. Just wait. Us boxing fans are sitting here just laughing like, oh, little MMA fan, it's okay. Trust me, your little interim belt, yes, it's a big deal. Just wait till you have 4 belts plus multiple belts within those sanctioning bodies. Oh, it's a goodie. Think about it.
Is this the super? Is this the regular? Is this the gold? Is it the silver? Is this the interim? Oh my God, what in the hell?
Well, I mean, think if I would say on average, you have obviously the 3 WBA belts. The IBF usually just has the IBF, right? WBO maybe has an interim. I know they have like the Intercontinental, but I'm not going to count those. WBO often does have an interim, so I'll count 2 for the WBO. And the WBC has interims all the time. They have the silver champions, diamond champions. I mean, we're possibly talking about, 10, 12 different belts that are in each division that are passed around like they matter. It's crazy. Jay saying, as far as I know, the only legitimate interim champions in UFC were Shane Carwin, Carlos Condit, Tony Ferguson, and Renan Barão. You know what? I probably largely agree with that. Especially the Carwin, Condit, and Renan Barão. Obviously, both those guys, or all 3 of those guys, came in when all those champions at the time were gone for over a year. That makes sense. I'm okay with that for obvious sense. But other ones, not so much. But digressing from all of that, let's get to this PFL announcement. Unless you have any more points about Holloway, Poirier.
No, you're good.
Let's get to the PFL, Professional Fighters League, inking a 2-year broadcast deal with, wrong one there. There we go. Inking a 2-year broadcast deal with ESPN, 10 events per year. I am actually highly shocked about this. For one, PFL has put up really mediocre cards. I'll say it. I know, like, good friend of the show, Jason Burgos over at Sherdog might not like that since he interviews a lot of PFL guys and women. But hey, I'm just being honest. They got Kayla Harrison. That's about it for me that I care about, and a fading Jake Shields that should be retired. They weren't pulling in the best ratings, so I'm curious as to what this deal is monetarily speaking. Obviously, that's not been announced. I don't think it's a lot, but I think it is cool to see PFL get a deal where they get some sort of security long term for a couple years. I think having a third promotional company that is relevant in the MMA landscape in the U.S., it has some importance still in today's age, even with the monopolization of the UFC, just MMA in general. But really curious overall, and this is sort of, again, side topic to this. I'm really curious as to the treatment and the dynamic of the UFC and PFL all under the ESPN umbrella. This is the first time in history that 2 U.S. promoters are sharing a U.S. network. That's never happened before. In boxing, it's rather common. Matchroom, Golden Boy with DAZN, Top Rank, Frank Warren, obviously, with ESPN. PBC works with a litany of promoters, right? Like, that is such a normal thing for boxing. In MMA, it's a very foreign concept, is co-promoting, especially in the U.S. Other places in the world, not so much, but in the U.S., co-promotion is a foreign concept. I'm just curious, again, what the dynamic is for PFL and UFC coverage, whether properties are interchanged sometimes or fighters are interchanged, whether now PFL becomes a feeder league in a sense. I don't know. I have a lot of questions about it moving forward. But, Fu, your thoughts on this major ESPN deal for Professional Fighters League, which I will say is a actual TV deal, unlike One Championship's Turner Sports deal, which was just a Bleacher Report Live deal, and they sold us on what that deal was. This is actually a legit 10-fight on ESPN deal. That is quite impressive. Again, your thoughts on this, Fu?
Yeah, it looks like they do have some details here regarding it looks like these fights are going to be placed on Thursday nights through the regular season, and then like the playoffs, or what do they call it? Not really playoffs, but they do call it playoffs. Mm-hmm. Playoff events, and then a season finale would be scheduled differently. What I'm wondering is, now you've got people with the ability to go to PFL and be on ESPN. So does more money come into PFL? Is it a place where some of these fighters who maybe feel like they're not getting what they need out of like a UFC contract
or Bellator,
right? Are they going to start maybe having some people go over and say, hey, we'll come over and help you build this lineup, put some good cards on, and the hopes that ESPN renews the contract and there's more money available there and they have more eyes on them? Because, I mean, we've already seen it in boxing, what Top Rank's been able to pull with boxers on ESPN because of the sheer amount of consumers there to watch them and to see them. Whereas that's more how I would look at it, is like, maybe they don't have the fight cards right now, but they probably will if they can continue. It's a 2-year deal. So assuming the viewership's good, you might see some of these guys go over and try out PFL and see how they like fighting over there and making a name for themselves, especially some of these guys who aren't getting, you got Darren Till, Poirier, in the last like week or two saying, let me out of my contract type deal. So how many more are going to be, more interim belts, more matchmaking like Holloway and Poirier? Like, how many people leave or want to leave and have opportunities now to go somewhere better or somewhere better for them?
Absolutely agree. It's definitely now a more viable contender and market player, I should say, with Bellator and the UFC. It's now firmly in that number 3 spot as a promotional company in the U.S. Anyways, let's get to one of the last topics of the day. Khabib's manager, Ali Abdelaziz, #free Noah. Obviously coming out and saying McGregor hasn't asked for a rematch, blah, 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 a bunch of bullshit no one cares about. Fu, I'll be honest, I don't have much to say about this because, I don't care about it. I find Ali Abdelaziz to be quite obnoxious in a lot of ways. I think Mike Russell's work has done a fantastic job of just sort of exposing him. So I don't have much to I'm not going to sort of parrot what Ali is saying. You can, though, Fu, if you want. Again, Conor, if he doesn't want the rematch, who cares? Go fight Donald Cerrone. I don't care if he doesn't want the rematch right now. I wouldn't want the rematch right now. What are you talking about? As a fan of the sport, I don't want the instant rematch. So, okay, Ali, McGregor hasn't asked for it. Neither have we. The fans aren't asking for it for obvious reasons. So let's just move on. Get your man to stop taking fucking Chechnyan dictatorship money, you fucking piece of slime. But anyways, Fu, your thoughts on Ali Abdelaziz and his thoughts on Conor McGregor not wanting the rematch and how?
Yeah.
Sorry. No, go.
Oh, gotcha.
I was gonna make another joke, but it's okay.
I think this is it says more about Khabib and his team because I think they want the Conor money, right? So they want the rematch, and Conor just kind of, right? Because
that was good. That was good. I didn't connect the dots there. That was good. I liked it.
So it's like, they prod him a little bit, try to get him to take the rematch. Conor's a very proud person. So you come out, you start saying he doesn't want a rematch. He comes back, says, nah, man, I'll fight anyone. Put me back in there. But I don't think Conor has anything to prove. I don't think he's ducked or dodged anyone. He's always fought top level. He
fought Khabib off of a 2-year layoff from MMA.
Yeah. I mean, he's a beast. Like he's not trying to go in against anyone easy, but at the same time, it's not a good matchup for him, and it's not really a good matchup for us. I mean, I don't know that anyone thinks he's going to go in and beat Khabib, whereas like he could be in more fun fights. Like Khabib's just a terrible matchup for Conor. Everyone knew it when it first got made. So I just think this is Khabib's team wanting a big paycheck again. Conor's a big paycheck.
Low key trying to play like reverse psychology and trying to trick Conor into wanting the fight. You're right, Phil. I think you're largely right there. It's not going to work this time, Ali. Haha. But digressing. Let's get to the last topic of the day. Speaking of Conor McGregor, his teammate Dylan Dennis has been suspended and fined for the UFC 229 post-fight brawl. And I just want to... I'm not a Dylan Dennis fan. I really am not. I think he's also quite obnoxious, to be honest. However, he got a higher, or I should say, a longer suspension. Not a bigger fine, but a longer suspension than Khabib did. When Khabib is the one that flying eagled out the cage on top of Dylan Dennis. And Dylan Dennis was defending himself. And yet he got a longer monthly suspension than Khabib if Khabib just did the PSA video. That is kind of crazy. Like, there's a lack of, consistency with your punishment there from Nevada, but, I mean, is that really shocking at all? Not really. Fu, your thoughts on this? As Dylan Dennis is now suspended for, I think it's, 7 months, 8 months, whatever it is. Who cares?
Yeah, I think this is setting a bad precedent because you're always going to have people yelling and talking shit from outside the cage, right? So you can't really tell fighters like, hey, you can jump out of the cage and jump at a guy and get him to, reciprocate, and then he'll get suspended and fined as well for defending himself.
And more,
right?
and more than you.
Right. So to me, it's like that's a big misstep. Like, I don't like Dennis, and I'm a Khabib fan to a degree. I mean, so like, I'm not saying Dennis didn't deserve to get, his ass kicked a little bit, because he probably did. Like, people said what he was saying, and obviously he's a fucking mouthy little
talk shit, get hit. I mean, come on.
Yeah. But if you're Khabib, and this happened, I sent you this link, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu match, the guy was getting heckled, and he went out in the crowd and assaulted a guy. Yeah,
that was crazy.
Right? And chased him clean through the building and stuff. And his master or sensei or whatever they call him, like, it would be a master, right? He came out and he just said, like,
I don't remember.
Basically he wouldn't give a guy like that a black belt. He's like, if you can't control your emotions and not attack people outside of the gym or the dojo or the ring, you don't deserve it. And I think that's the same for Khabib. And we talked about this, with Mitty, who's obviously not like a huge UFC guy, but is a boxer and is very disciplined, right? He said, it's not on anyone else. It's on the person who leaves the ring or the cage and fights someone else, right? It's
absolutely
on Khabib.
I'll be honest,
right?
I'm shocked Dylan Dennis received a suspension.
Yeah.
I don't think he should have.
No, he shouldn't have.
I'll be honest, like, he did nothing wrong here. Like, if you have a mad Dagestani fucking destroyer of worlds jumping out from on top of a cage, 20 feet in the air, double Superman kicking you, what are you supposed to do? Not do anything? And again, just bad precedent. It just makes zero sense to me. And it's also completely on par with what Nevada does. They have no fucking clue how to dispense justice, so to speak, when it comes to combat sports. They have zero understanding of anything. It's frustrating.
They're like, we just have to punish everyone involved, regardless.
Except for Islam Makhachev, except for I think another guy in the UFC that has fights coming up, and they didn't receive any suspension.
Wow.
And they were actively a part of the brawl. But hey, whatever.
You want to talk at all about I mean, we talked about it before, but Adesanya came and made comments again. Okay, cool.
Well, no, those weren't comments about the new card coming up. The link you sent me, though, you know that, right? Wasn't about the UFC 236 card. It's about the last UFC card that he wanted pay-per-view points for. So I didn't think that was news.
Oh, gotcha.
I thought you just
clarified the points, but yeah, you're good. You're good.
Well, there's no link that you sent me that was a new article. Phil.
Gotcha.
So if he has said that, he should get pay-per-view points. I would assume he does. It's for an interim belt. He should. If he isn't, has bad management. And two, I would believe again, like he that's an old topic because again, that's for the last fight, not for this one. Gotcha. At least from what I have seen, I've not seen anything that's new about that. That was again for the Anderson Silva fight in Adelaide, Australia, or Sydney, Australia. So, anyways, digressing. We don't need to talk about Adesanya at all. We can just head out of here. It's late.
Cool.
It's a school night for my kids, so gotta put them to bed. All that fun shit. Final thoughts. I really like this UFC card. Like, I really do. I needed a big card that felt like top to bottom, all the pay-per-view fights have like weight to them. I've missed that. I'll be honest. Like, think about the last one we just had for Silva Adesanya. Like, that was the only fight I cared about on the entire card. Pay-per-view card included. Pay-per-view portion included. This one, top to bottom, there's fights I care about. Pay-per-view card is littered with every single fight being important. I like that. 6 fights I'm paying $65 for. All of them are top 10 fights or championship level fights. I'm happy. You got my money. And Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier, still very conflicted about why that is and why it's happening. And even if I like it or not, I don't know. I'm still very confused about it. Yogi saying, oh, no call. It's okay. I'm a Patreon now. Well, Yogi, you haven't called in, and we do have to move on. I do apologize. We have to leave. We've been on for an hour and 45 minutes. Or we did another show today. If you're a new patron, like you said, go check out Championship Rounds, which I did earlier today. Get more content. But yes. Jay saying, when are we doing predictions? Jay, we already did predictions. I think you came in late to the show. I'll be honest, Jay. I think you missed the whole UFC 235 breakdown discussion. We broke down the whole card. But go rewind and check that out, Jay. We're going to be out of here. We'll be back tomorrow with our regular boxing show, regular time with Rob. Fu, I don't know what your schedule like is tomorrow or this week, but obviously say that. Final thoughts and where the people can find you.
Yeah, final thoughts. 235 is going to be an exceptional card. I'm very excited that Jones is fighting again. Hope that holds, like we said. And you guys can find me at Fugatti_MCR on Instagram and Twitter. I've got pretty busy schedule the next couple of days, but I'll probably be able to get around to some stuff Thursday, Friday, and obviously I got Harrison's birthday on Saturday.
Ooh, I didn't know that. Shout out.
Yeah. He's turns 5.
Turning the big 5.
Years old. Good Lord.
Yo, my kid turning 5 this year too in August, and I'm just like, oh my God. Oh,
that's wild.
That's why the gray hair is coming in. Yes, I now know why.
Yeah, I'm definitely hoping for a live fight chat with you guys on Saturday.
Well, just me.
Oh, just you.
Well, you think Rob's going to do a UFC 235 live fight chat?
Really wish we could get Rob into UFC.
I think if it was like time, if it wasn't so like, if it wasn't 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning, I think Rob would jump on with us. But
Yeah.
like, it's 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning. I'm not gonna stay up for that shit. Have fun, you two. But anyways, Fu.
Yeah. So I mean, that's my thoughts. Yogi, I usually follow the Instagram page because I post when the shows are going live. Obviously in the future, just call in anytime. The phone lines are always open. And yeah, man, can't wait to hear from you. Love to have callers, and we're going to be doing a lot more MMA stuff. I'm trying to really up my knowledge on MMA and give Matt someone to really have some good back and forth with. And obviously, we always enjoy you guys being here for the show.
I don't know what you did, Fu, but like something clicked. Like I heard like a pop in your feed or whatever, and actually it got rid of the white noise.
Oh yes.
So I don't know if it's actually true, but it sounded like you accidentally fixed whatever white noise that shit was. I don't know if you bumped your computer, shit finally like plugged in right, but it sounded good. Like I was like, oh shit, no white noise. Like the clouds parted, angels started singing. It was amazing. It was amazing. My ears like, oh my god, I don't have a headache right now. It's great. But anyways, be back tomorrow. Have a great night, great day, great afternoon, wherever you are. Be safe, have fun. Hit the like button, share the show, subscribe. Go to patreon.com/Mixed Combat Radio. If you listen to podcast, want to drop that 5-star review, all that stuff. You know what it is. You know where to find us. All the links below in the description. Have a great night. Peace.
Peace.
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
Are you off your tits? Have you been smoking something?
But you commit to me, and you get a piece of my heart, and you get my commitment, I'm gonna make you a star, motherfucker.
I'm Phil. I'm very Phil.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?